Welcome, guys, to another episode. I'm Ombarus, and today's episode is a little bit special. We're going to try to figure out if we can build an app for Apple without using anything belonging to Apple. And let me tell you, it's a challenge. As you guys might know, my idea for this series is to first try to do a project from A to Z that will implement everything I need to know for releasing real, serious apps and making money from them. And this dice throwing game is probably not what's going to make me a millionaire, but I'm hoping it's going to show me everything I need to know. And that includes marketing and advertising. To learn that, I need to post some advertisement or I need to do some kind of market research and stuff like that. I've been looking at market share for Apple and Android, and really I realized that if I cannot say that I have it for iPhone as well as Android, it's just going to look kind of weak and unprofessional. So I thought if I can do it with without having to buy all the stuff I need to build on Mac, um, maybe I should try it. I know that the tool I'm using are cross-platform, so I knew I could build something. There are some things you absolutely need a Mac for. Here are the main issues I had with trying to build my app on the iPhone. The first thing was something called two-factor authentication for your Apple ID. This was a really big challenge. The second thing, it's always a problem with Mac, and I knew that. The certificate and the mobile provisioning for Apple, it's like a weird thing that no one can quite figure out. Actually compiling the app for iPhone and generating the IPA, something I wasn't expecting, but actually uploading your compiled app to the App Store is kind of a challenge. And then, of course, how do you test your app and make sure that it works before you release it on the App Store? So I'm going to show you how I tackled all of these problems. The first thing is the two-factor authentication. For Apple, you need your Apple ID to register as a developer. And then you need to pay $130 Canadian per year to be able to generate signing certificate and connect to the app stores and upload your application. And so I just registered a new Apple ID for my business and I tried to enroll into their developer program, like they say. And this was actually blocked because I didn't have two-factor authentication. And it said in the page, it said you just need to go to profile properties and enable it. So I went there and enabled two-step authentication. But turns out that two-step authentication is not the same thing as two-factor authentication. And two-step authentication is kind of the old method of doing things. And now they require you to use the new method. But the thing is you cannot enable this new method in the options anywhere. You need to have a Mac or an Apple phone to be able to enable that. There was just no way around it. I had a couple of potential solutions. I could rent a Mac and maybe try to connect with my Apple ID through this remote Mac. I could try to ask a friend who has an iPhone if he could log in with my Apple ID, or I had to find another way. And the other way I found was actually you can use something called VirtualBox to install a macOS virtual machine on your PC. So I downloaded VirtualBox, I downloaded an image of a macOS High Sierra, and I was able to actually launch a Mac inside my PC. But the thing is that Apple are very proprietary and they could detect that this was not a legitimate or genuine Apple product. So even though I was trying to connect with my Apple ID on various services on the Mac, Apple kept denying it, saying that it was an invalid Mac and that I couldn't actually register my Apple ID on it. But when I went into the iCloud and I clicked on connect to iCloud, I still got the error. But right when I got the prompt to say that I couldn't use my Apple ID and iCloud on this Mac, I also got another prompt that says, now you have two-factor authentication enabled. I'm not quite sure what the magic was. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be able to work forever, but once you have it enabled, it's enabled forever, and so you don't need to do it again. And so from that point on, I could complete the registration process to enroll as a Apple developer and pay my $130, and then I could access the the equivalent of the Play console on Android for Apple, actually. There's really two menus. There's the certificate identities and provisioning page, and there's the store page. So the store page is to create your new apps and store presence, and then the certification is to generate the signing keys and stuff like that that you need to be able to build. Because actually, where Android will let you just build whatever you want and test it on whatever device you want to test it on, Apple requires you to sign your app even for development. I went ahead and the first thing I did was try to generate my certificate. The instructions for that, of course, are all if you're using a Mac and you're on Xcode, it's very easy. You just click in Xcode something and it'll generate everything for you. Um, I wanted to try to do it without using a Mac. Even though I had the virtual machine that I could have used to do it, I wanted to try to do it without it because connecting to the virtual machine is not so great. So, how do you generate the provisioning and the certificates and the stuff you need without going through Xcode? Turns out you can do it. There's a couple of commands, and if you have Java installed and OpenSSL, it's fairly straightforward. You can see here how I did it. Just look at the command and just type that, and it's going to work. What I did is I reused the key store I had for Android that already had a private key and a public key stored in the Java key store. And the challenge was to extract these and then put them into the equivalent of the key store, but for Apple. And once you have that, you send your private key and your public key to Apple for some validation, and they're going to emit a signing certificate that guarantees that these keys were approved by Apple to be used into building your software. Then you have to take that and package it into what they call a P12 store, which is the equivalent of the Android store, but just another way of storing your certificate and all that. And then once you have that, then you generate some app ID, and then you can register some devices for testing, and then you generate your mobile provisioning. The mobile provisioning and the resulting P12 store is required to be able to build your application. So then after you've done all that, the question is, how do I build my application? Of course, normally you need Xcode. I wanted to try to avoid that once again. And I found that the PhoneGap Build is a website where you can connect to a Git repository. It's basically a front end for Cordova that allows you to build any kind of Cordova application using the config.xml and the code you put in the www folder. It'll download all the plugins, it'll set up everything according to the config files, and it's fairly straightforward. You need your certificate. You need to upload your certificate and all that to the PhoneGap build system, and it'll output an IPA, and then you can download this IPA, and then you have to upload it to the App Store. And so then the next challenge is how do you upload this to the App Store? So first of all, you go back to the developer homepage, you click on the App Store section, and then you have to go. You're going to be redirected to another different kind of website that has nothing with the certification and that has nothing with the developer homepage. And in there, you can actually set up your new apps. It's very similar to the app console in Android, actually. So it's basically you have to set up the same kind of stuff. You have to set up your website, your short description, long description, name of your app. If you have in-app purchase, you even have the same thing like for rating. You have to choose from a bunch of questions, and then it is going to assign a rating for you. And once you have that, and you've uploaded your icons and screenshots, you have to upload your IPA. And that's where I ran into another problem because you cannot just click and upload it from the website. You have to use Apple's tool to upload the IPA. You can set up everything else, but the IPA has to be uploaded from some tools. Of course, Xcode can do it for you as another external program from Xcode called Application Uploader. But of course, this also only runs on Mac. So this is the only other time I tried as hard as I could. I actually found another software that looked like it could do it, but it wasn't working for me. And then the only way I could find to do it was to boot again my virtual machine, connect to my local machine, send myself the IPA over on the virtual machine, and then use this application uploader to upload the IPA to my app page. That kind of sucks as a process, but it's not so bad. And once I had that, you can actually go into test flight, and test flight is a way to distribute your app before you've released it. And this is actually really cool. And then you can enable some kind of public link, and you send this link to the people you want them to test, and they install the test flight app, and they open the link with the flight app, and then the app is going to install itself on their phone, and they can test the stuff. So the only way I found to test was find someone I knew that had an iPhone, ask them if they were willing to spend a little bit of time testing it. They installed test flight on their phone, and then I sent them the link, and then they downloaded the app, they installed it, and they could send me some report about like what was working, what wasn't working. I was surprised to learn that there was quite a few things that were working really okay in the browser when I set it to emulate an iPhone, and when he was testing on his phone, it was just not working at all. And so I spent a long time blindly debugging all the issues, but somehow managed to do it. One of the things I had to do at the very end when I just couldn't figure out the bug is that I booted once again my virtual machine, and then I tested it in Safari on the virtual box. And like that, I was able to replicate the bugs I was having, and I was able to debug everything without like sending a build version every 10 minutes to the person who was willing to help me. Once I had debugged everything, I sent him another version using test flight again, and he tested it. And once he told me everything was okay, I was able to just submit for review my app, and it should show up on the store. Seriously, the process is incredibly painful. Even if I had a Mac, it would just be so painful and so excruciatingly dumb. Um, Even now, I've uploaded my app on the App Store, but I cannot see it because you cannot browse the apps from a web page, and you need to browse it from iTunes or your phone. But if you install iTunes on your PC, as long as you don't connect a phone, then iTunes will not show you the app page. It'll show you only music, which I guess makes kind of sense. You know, it's kind of cool. Ah, yeah, we're gonna simplify the interface. If you don't have a phone, why would you see apps? But come on, I can't see my app just because I don't have an Apple phone. It is, oh. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how I managed to build a iPhone app without a Mac and without an iPhone and release it on the app stores. This was what I did for the better part of 2 weeks. Now, what I want to do is try to release a free version. And to do that, I'm going to have to add advertisements, and I'm going to have to add in-app purchase because I want people to be able to remove the advertisement by paying a small fee. And then finally, I'm going to actually try to advertise my app on different forums and blogs, and maybe even use Google AdSense or something to promote my app. I want to see how many downloads I can get, give me an idea of what works, what doesn't. Until and then finally we're gonna start a real project that will probably take the next couple of months or years. And that's it, guys. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something today. And if you ever try to build an app for iPhone without using an iPhone, let me know what you did. And if you did anything different, I'm very interested in knowing any other method. These two things, the two-factor authentication and the uploading of the app that I couldn't do without a Mac, if I could do it on the PC, I'd be very interested to know how you guys did it. So let me know in the comment section, and see you in my next episode. Bye, guys.